The rise and fall of America's greatest vehicle. Every so often in automotive history, a group of innovators comes along and redefines what a car can be. Think about it: the Volkswagen Beetle, the front-wheel drive Mini Cooper, the rise of the SUV, or the hatchback revolution. These shapes did not just appear, they were pushed, promoted, and protected by the industry at the right moment. But here is the twist. While some designs were elevated, others were quietly erased. What if I told you that one of the most balanced, versatile, and beloved vehicle shapes in American history, a car that perfectly bridged utility, comfort, and family life, did not fade away naturally? It was phased out, marginalized, buried. I am talking about the station wagon. Was it truly outdated, or was it targeted because it made too much sense? Got memories riding in one? Think we were sold on an illusion of progress? Let us know in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that challenge the official version of automotive history. Did you know that in 1976, Americans bought 972,212 station wagons? 10% of all cars sold that year. There were 62 wagon models available. Today, we barely have half that many SUVs in variety, yet they dominate the market with nearly 50% of all sales. It is wild to think how the beloved wagon, once everywhere, has almost vanished while crossovers now rule the roads. But let us set the numbers aside for a moment. Let us go back to something more personal. When was the last time you took a road trip with your family in a station wagon? For me, it was a sun-soaked summer day. The AM/FM radio playing country music, while my sister and I were locked in a screaming match over who got to sit in the throne, that glorious rear-facing third-row seat. Back there, I could make silly faces at the cars behind us, even hold up a out-of-gas sign just for laughs. No one wore seatbelts. It was all about laughter and pure, unfiltered joy. Back then, the station wagon was as American as apple pie. So, what changed? Some say it was market trends, but others believe it was a quiet takedown, driven by profits, policy loopholes, and marketing spin. The wagon did not fade, it was phased out on purpose. To understand that, we need to rewind all the way to the early 20th century. Back then, most Americans still traveled by train. And the name station wagon did not come from nowhere. It came from what these vehicles actually did at the station. They were originally called depot hacks, horse-drawn carriages meant to haul passengers and luggage from the train depot to their destination. They were essentially modified trucks with wood benches and wide, flat floors. The first major breakthrough came in 1910, thanks to Henry Ford. For just $700, Ford began selling bare Model T chassis to small independent coach builders who would then craft custom wooden bodies on top. At that time, there were 551 car manufacturers in America. It is hard to believe, especially when compared to the big three today. But it was not until 1929, with the debut of the Ford Model A station wagon, that the name truly stuck. Then, in 1935, Chevrolet ignited a revolution by introducing the first all-steel wagon body. No more wood. But Americans still loved wood for its upscale look and elegance. Not to be outdone, Ford went all in, building its own wood body manufacturing plant in Iron Mountain, Michigan, using lumber from its own forest operations. Wood came at a cost: constant upkeep, rot, and re-varnishing. In 1946, Willys introduced the first all-steel wagon with fake wood grain, and by 1949, Plymouth's Suburban ended the real woody era. But according to some leaked internal documents and interviews with former industry insiders, automakers, under heavy influence from steel industry giants, phased out real wood not just for practicality, but to tighten supply chains and boost steel profits. What looked like innovation may have been a calculated shift toward corporate consolidation, quietly disguised as modern convenience. After World War II, America entered a new era, one where everything expanded. Families grew bigger, houses got larger, and travel distances stretched farther than ever. Between 1945 and 1964, over 76 million babies were born during the baby boom, fueling massive suburban growth. By 1956, the Federal Aid Highway Act had authorized 41,000 miles of interstate roads, revolutionizing family travel. Suburbs sprouted like mushrooms. The interstate highway system connected the states, and the baby boom generation sent family transportation needs into overdrive. In that age, the station wagon was not just a vehicle, it was an icon. I still remember my neighbor's green '68 Ford Country Squire, wood paneling and all, pulling into the driveway every evening after a long day at work. On weekends, they would load it up, coolers, kids, folding chairs, and head off to Little League games or road trips. In the early 1950s, wagons made up less than 3% of all cars built in America. But by the end of the decade, that number had skyrocketed to nearly 17%. Think about that. In just 10 years, they went from a niche product to 1 out of every 5 cars sold. By 1958, Plymouth's best-selling body style was not the sedan or the coupe. It was the station wagon. That says it all. So what made them so special? First off, they were huge. The 1968 Ford Country Squire stretched a whopping 218 inches, longer than today's Chevy Tahoe. But it was not just about size. Wagons carried the American dream. They were made for the 5-person family in the suburbs, with a tent in the back, skis on the roof, and kids packed in, shoulder to shoulder, or sitting backwards making faces at the car behind. They symbolized a nation that believed in a bright future, one where every child had a seat, somewhere. And the variety? Unreal. 2-door wagons, 4-door wagons, pillarless hardtops or framed, 2-row, 3-row, rear-facing third seats, side-facing jump seats. The tailgates? GM even invented the clamshell design, fully retractable without anything in the way. Everyone surely remembers the feeling of sitting on that tailgate edge during family trips, legs dangling, watching the world go by. It was not just clever, it was unforgettable American engineering. The 1960s were the golden age. You had the Vista Cruiser with skylights, the compact Ford Falcon wagons, mid-sizers, and of course, the land yachts, like the Country Squire. If you were a middle-class American family, odds are you had a wagon at some point. It was your grocery hauler, your team shuttle, your road trip machine for visiting grandma across state lines. And the marketing? It was pure artistry. Ford called theirs the Country Squire. It sounded aristocratic. Chrysler launched the Town and Country line. Urban charm meets rustic retreat. Every brand offered faux wood grain vinyl trim. Even if it was just plastic, it screamed, "I have made it." And do not forget performance. By the late 1960s, you could buy a wagon with a big block V8 pushing over 400 cubic inches. Sure, it guzzled fuel at 8 miles per gallon, but gas was cheap and America was on top of the world. Who cared? In October 1973, it felt like America took a punch straight to the face. The Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries suddenly announced a total oil embargo on the West. And within just a few weeks, the price of oil shot up from $3 a barrel to nearly $12. A nearly 300% spike. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find gas prices have quadrupled. That is exactly how Americans felt back then. Gas lines stretched for blocks. Some stations only sold fuel to cars with even numbered plates on even days. Odd plates on odd days. Drivers were limited to 10 gallons per fill-up. But the worst part? The beloved station wagon, the pride of the American family, suddenly became a burden. With fuel economy hovering around 10 to 12 miles per gallon, these land yachts were now too thirsty in a world where gas was scarce and shockingly expensive. As one longtime fan put it, when gas hit $1 a gallon, driving the wagon felt more like a luxury than a necessity. Wagon sales tanked. From nearly 1 million sold in 1970, the numbers plummeted within just a few years. Chrysler was the first to wave the white flag, ending production of full-size wagons entirely by 1978. But that was not the worst of it. Emissions regulations added even more pressure. Starting in 1972, stricter EPA standards forced automakers to spend millions redesigning engines. The big, powerful V8s that once defined the station wagon had to be neutered just to pass, and somehow burned even more gas in the process. It was a double hit: expensive to build, impossible to price high enough to offset costs. As one longtime dealer put it, we could not move wagons off the lot. Even with discounts, people just walked past them. Wagons were losing their edge. Then came the knockout blow: the minivan. In 1984, Chrysler launched the Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager, and everything changed forever. Shorter, lighter, more fuel-efficient than wagons, but with even more interior room. Sliding doors made loading kids a breeze. They drove like cars but carried the whole family. And most importantly, they felt new to a new generation. For baby boomers, those kids who once sat in the way back of a station wagon, they did not want to drive the same car their parents did. But the real knockout punch? It came from Japan, the SUV. That same year, 1984, the Jeep Cherokee was reborn with a unibody frame, 4 doors, and a compact but bold design. It was smaller than a wagon, but tougher and stylish. It was not just a car, it was a lifestyle statement. Then came the Toyota 4Runner, Nissan Pathfinder, Ford Explorer. One after another, they chewed up the wagon's market share. By the early 1990s, the station wagon was not just out of favor, it had become a financial liability. Some American automakers were actually losing money on every wagon sold. Once a symbol of the American dream, the station wagon had become a memory, fading slowly in the rearview mirror. By 2004, the station wagon in America was nearly extinct. Across the country, only 26 models remained. Ford had 2, Chrysler had 1, and General Motors held on to a single version. Just 10 years later, in 2016, that number had dropped to only 8 true wagons left on sale. Wagon lovers were especially heartbroken when the Ford Taurus wagon ended production in 2005, followed by the Ford Focus wagon in 2008. General Motors was the last to hang on, keeping the Caprice and Roadmaster alive until 1996, but eventually, even they had to let go. And the bitterest part? Those final wagons, Caprice, Roadmaster, and Oldsmobile Custom Cruiser, were basically the same car. Different grille, different badge, but all shared the same platform. Like watching a former boxing champion barely able to stand, still clinging to the ring because he did not want to quit. So how did a once glorious vehicle class fade away? It was not just market forces. It was a perfect storm with a suspicious tilt. First, the CAFE standards, the corporate average fuel economy rules, were supposed to promote efficiency. But here is the twist. While sedans and wagons were punished for poor miles per gallon, SUVs, despite being larger and thirstier, were magically classified as light trucks and handed a regulatory-free pass. Coincidence? Or a quiet favor to push America toward higher-margin vehicles? Suddenly, a fuel-hungry Suburban was easier to sell and more profitable than a Caprice wagon. Second was profit. A vehicle like the Ford Explorer might cost only $1,000 more to build than a sedan, but it could be sold for $5,000 to $10,000 more. If you are the CEO of a car company, the choice is pretty obvious. And the final factor, the one that saddens me most, is that Americans convinced themselves SUVs were safer, stronger, and more capable, even though 99% never left the pavement. People do not buy what is logical, they buy what looks powerful, admitted one former Detroit executive off the record. We traded practicality for perception, and the wagon paid the price. So where are wagons now? Technically, they are not dead, just rebranded and on life support. European brands like Audi, Volvo, BMW, and Mercedes still offer them in the United States under names like Avant or Touring, but they avoid the term station wagon at all costs. By 2015, wagons made up only 1.1% of U.S. car sales, compared to over 5% in the late 1980s. The irony? Crossovers like the Honda CR-V and Toyota RAV4 are essentially wagons with higher ground clearance and SUV styling. Subaru nailed it early with the Outback, just a lifted wagon with good PR, and it sold like crazy. There were comeback tries too. The Cadillac CTS Sport Wagon offered a 556 horsepower V8, yet sold fewer than 1,200 units in 4 years. The Buick Regal Tour X had space and value, but flopped, moving just over 13,000 units total. Why? Because it was still called a wagon. And in today's market, that word alone seems to seal its fate. Could wagons ever make a true comeback? Maybe, if gas hit $10 a gallon and stayed there. Or if there was a massive cultural shift where Americans started valuing efficiency over image. But even then, I would bet automakers would rebrand it as a compact crossover rather than admit, hey, turns out wagons made sense all along. I was born just as wagons were fading out, but I still remember seeing a few of them. An old immortal Volvo 240 parked in a grocery lot, or a rusty Pontiac wagon still hauling stuff in someone's driveway. Every time I saw one, it felt like spotting a rare wild animal. They were not perfect, heavy, ugly, gas-thirsty, but they were where memories were made, playing license plate bingo, making faces at cars behind you, falling asleep with your head against the window. The wagon was a symbol of American belief that we would build things bigger, roomier, and slap fake wood on the side just because, why not? But when the wagon disappeared, we lost more than a car. We lost character. We lost practicality. And most of all, we lost a piece of childhood and road trips that will never happen the same way again. So what did we really lose when the station wagon disappeared? First, practicality. Sure, your crossover looks modern, but try loading a 4x8 plywood sheet in it, or stretching out to sleep on a camping trip. A real wagon handled all that, at a lower cost than today's SUVs. We also lost character. Every wagon had a personality, sporty, luxurious, or workhorse. Now, crossovers all look the same, bloated sedans with plastic trim. But here is the deeper truth. Wagons did not fail us. We were guided away from them. Regulatory loopholes and marketing psychology nudged consumers toward bigger profits, not better solutions. SUVs did not replace wagons because they were better. They replaced them because they were more profitable, and perception was easier to sell than logic. One anonymous ex-industry insider put it bluntly, "We stopped selling utility and started selling identity." Wagons once held 17% of the market. Now, virtually gone. It only took one generation, and if it happened once, it can happen again. Whether it is electric vehicles, autonomous pods, or some new marketing trick, the shift will come. But let us be honest, we did not just lose a vehicle. We lost the family connection. The wagon was not flashy, but it was ours. It built memories in ways no badge-engineered SUV ever could. So what about you? Do you have any station wagon memories? What was your first ride? A wood-paneled country Squire? A Volvo 240 for the safety-conscious? Maybe a Vista Cruiser with a skylight? Or were you one of the lucky ones who actually bought a wagon? Share what that felt like. Would you buy a wagon today if they brought it back? A modern country squire with a hybrid V8, 3 rows, and fake wood trim? Or do you think the golden era is gone for good? Drop a comment below. I would love to hear your story. And if you are one of us who still believes lower is better, then maybe, just maybe, there is still hope for the wagon. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so we can keep the spirit of American cars alive.